What's up, guys? Stock Picks by Tim here, and I'm going to be going over BioNano's 32nd Annual Healthcare Conference. And this was supposed to be coming out March 15th. I couldn't find it on this site here, but it's finally out, and I cut it up into about 13 minutes for you guys. I'm going to leave you with this, hop in and out of it a couple of times. But first off, we're going to look at the chart. We actually had a really nice day today, up about 10%. And now we are working on pushing our previous resistance here right at about $2. So once we break out from 2, we are very likely to test some higher levels. So hopefully we will finish this week pretty strong and break above 2 Thursday or Friday, but we will see what happens. It depends on the overall market. Alright, make sure you hit the like and subscribe. I put out daily videos, and make sure you check out the links below for some free crypto and stocks. And let's get into that clip.
As of the end of 2021, we had 164 of our optical genome mapping instruments installed on 5 continents around the world. Our revenues for 2021 were $18 million, and we had about $250 million in cash at the end of the year. Just really wanted to cover the fact that we have an outstanding team that is responsible for driving the amazing revenues, $18 million last year, growing the install base to 164 systems. This team comprises industry veterans from the tools and diagnostics area, clinical applications such as Alka Chabe, who led testing at PerkinElmer Genomics, and other leaders, as well as board members who come from leading institutions. But what I really want to talk to you a little bit about is where the company is positioned. And we're very focused on driving the next wave of big biology in genomics. And we believe that that's going to come from structural variation analysis. If you look back at the first 20 years of this century, you'll see that they really were the 2 decades of next generation sequencing, and Illumina has the biggest footprint there and has done an amazing job at creating industries, and all sorts of companies have formed around the capabilities of next generation sequencing. But at the same time, you can see that the pace of innovation is slowing down. Illumina itself is becoming a content company with its focus on the acquisition of Grail. And so it creates opportunities for innovation in technology and applications across genomics. And that's what we're doing, to focus on the structure of the genome and its variation. So this idea of structural variation is very well established. The term may be a new term, but the idea of looking at chromosomal rearrangements or aberrations is the very fundamental foundation of medical testing and genetics and cancer today. In fact, all of these medical guideline agencies that you see listed here have as first tier testing recommendations some form of structural variation analysis. And so this idea of structural variation is as important or more important than sequencing. And what it refers to is really the changes in location and orientation and amount of the functional elements in the genome, like genes and reading frames and so forth, and where they're located across the genome, as opposed to a change in sequence. If that's a new term for you, the reason is probably that traditionally there's been no platform capable of the kind of industrial scale analysis of structure. In fact, today, most structural variation analysis occurs in a cytogenetic laboratory, and it's based on several different platforms being used: FISH, karyotyping, microarrays, Southern blot, PCR. Everybody in cytogenetics wishes that they had a sequencing-like workflow to address all of these structural variations in a single system. Sequencing was long hoped to be that system, but it turns out that sequencing, those from Illumina or PacBio or Oxford Nanopore, don't reliably detect these large chromosomal rearrangements. And so our opportunity is to industrialize this workflow picture that you see on the left-hand side of the slide. The application areas for us are really broken down into 2: cytogenetics and translational research. And in cytogenetics, we've talked about the idea that the traditional tools are been around for a while, difficult to operate, and costly, labor intense. And traditionally in a cytogenetics lab, 50 to 70% of samples are returned with no pathogenic findings. So there's a lot of room to improve those workflows. And so that's the role that optical genome mapping plays by consolidating the workflows, shortening the time to results, which is critical, lowering costs, and ultimately improving the success rates by identifying more pathogenic variants. And so optical genome mapping offers a completely new tool, which is highly complementary to sequencing and enables translational researchers to see more variants that matter now with our software in a single report. So we're addressing these two segments.
All right, guys, sorry if this looks a little blurry. It looks blurry for me. So to reiterate, he said we had more growth of the Saphyr system, more adoption of their system, and revenue growth. And also that structural variation analysis is the next wave of big biology in genomics. And also, the CEO believes that innovation has slowed and the OGM or optical genome mapping is speeding that innovation back up. And finally, Bionano's product essentially brings a more efficient and better detailed machine to the table. Let's continue.
Market opportunity for these segments is rather substantial. And so we estimate that the combination of cytogenetics, which is about 5 million patient samples processed per year globally, and the market opportunity for the translational research application, comprises complementing some 6,000 or so high throughput whole genome sequencers in the world. And so altogether, we estimate that base market for us ranges between $2.6 to $3.8 billion. And so, on top of that, there are many other areas in which the available market for optical genome mapping can expand. So we've listed some of those to the right here. We're very excited about population genetics because it's been primarily focused on sequencing, and there's an opportunity for these projects to layer on structural analysis going forward. So the market opportunity is substantial and growing for optical genome mapping. And when we look at the performance of the Saphyr system against some of these sequencers for structural variation analysis, as we've been mentioning, these results are based on published studies that have compared the approaches side by side. And what you see very clearly is that with regard to large structural variation detection, optical genome mapping is much better than sequencing. And this is becoming more and more established, but it's also high throughput and low cost. And so the combination of optical genome mapping with short read sequencing from Illumina is the perfect match for revealing a maximum amount of information in the genome to drive all sorts of translational research studies. And of course, as we've talked about, on an individual patient basis, it has the potential to reveal many more answers and improve success rates. And so this slide really shows the differentiation from sequencing, but also underscores the complementarity with.
Okay, now to recap, their available market opportunity is substantial and growing, and also OGM can analyze as a superior alternative to these traditional machines. And also in comparison, you can see more, which gives you just a better detail when you're looking at the genomes. All right, now let's keep going.
When we compare optical genome mapping against the traditional methods in cytogenetic analysis, you see that OGM is the one workflow that has the potential to really consolidate these four techniques. So historically, karyotyping, FISH, and more recently, chromosomal microarray are the go-to technologies for analyzing samples in genetic disease and cancer. Southern blot is also used for certain applications, and optical genome mapping offers the potential to address all of these variant types that has historically required at least four technologies to address. So you can imagine that technology consolidation is something that the market is very interested in. Now, when we look at the reasons that customers are adopting OGM, those reasons are very compelling, and they're listed on the left-hand side of this slide. So we've been talking about this idea of consolidating workflows, faster times to results. It's a less expensive result when you use optical genome mapping to get it, because it's higher resolution than karyotyping, which ultimately delivers more answers by detecting events that are missed by these traditional methodologies. Now, along the right, we're listing several publications that have come out. These are all in high-profile, peer-reviewed journals that substantiate the claims that we're making here on the left-hand slide. And so this has been incredible progress for the company in terms of establishing a solid foundation in the literature to support the value propositions for adopting our methodology. This is one beautiful example of a laboratory that has developed a workflow based on optical genome mapping. It's in Belgium at KU Leuven. And you can see their traditional approach listed on the left-hand side here, which relied on karyotyping, 10 different fish assays, an MLP assay. It had a turnaround time of about 4 weeks. And over time, they worked out a revised workflow that introduced optical genome mapping. And you can see that the new workflow was dramatically improved. So optical genome mapping really replaced the karyotyping. They still use it for confirmation, but the results from optical genome mapping are immediately actionable. They were able to eliminate 9 out of 10 fish assays. Now, these assays, just in materials alone, can cost $200 to $400 to even $600 per assay. And so eliminating multiple fish assays is incredibly important. They've retained one, a rapid fish test for BCR-ABL, and they can get results in about 2 hours with that test. So it makes sense to retain that. They eliminated MLPA altogether. And so as a result, the turnaround time went from 4 weeks to 1 week. So they're saving 3 weeks on their workflow. And then at the bottom of the slide, you can see that the cost was dramatically improved. So milestones that you can use to track the progress of the company over the first half. We've got milestones in reimbursement, clinical studies. Over the second half, we'll be expanding the installed base, reaching 240 systems by the end of the year, all sorts of product development initiatives and progress on our clinical studies, which are intended to clear the path to reimbursement. So we've got an exciting year planned, and one of the bigger initiatives will be to create the pre-commercial version of our new instrument, which will be launched commercially in 2023.
So as you can likely tell, OGM can consolidate workflow, meaning less individual machines needed, and peer-reviewed journals have confirmed the massive value proposition of Bionano's product. Now I'm going to leave you with the Q&A, just one answer to a question that I think is worth listening to. But thanks as always, guys, and hope you enjoy.
Yes, well, what we've talked about is getting to 240 systems installed worldwide, up from the 164 that we ended the year with. So, that's substantial growth on a percentage basis. It's not as quite as high as it was last year, but on an absolute basis, it's substantial. We're talking about revenues in this 24 to 27 range, and we've guided folks to 5.5, I think 5.5 to 5.8 in revenues this quarter. And so that's the sort of visibility that we have, and I think that on a global basis, everybody is just keeping an eye right in front of them and trying to gain as much visibility into the future as we can. We entered the year with tremendous momentum, but there are many macro factors that create uncertainty. So it's probably a balance, and but we're comfortable with the guidance that we set. And of course, this is the first time that we've been comfortable enough to put that revenue guidance out.